At 3:17 a.m. on a crisp Tuesday morning in early October, the sprawling city sanitation yard hummed with the familiar sounds of diesel engines warming up and hydraulic systems being tested by drivers conducting their mandatory pre-shift safety inspections. A row of massive garbage trucks, each weighing over 40,000 pounds when fully loaded, sat idling under harsh white floodlights that cut through the pre-dawn darkness like surgical beams, their distinctive green and yellow municipal colors gleaming with moisture from the night's light rain that had left the asphalt surface slick and reflective. Before I walk you through the full story, I just have a small favor to ask. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and let me know in the comments. What city are you watching from? It's always amazing to see how far this audience is reaching. The sanitation facility, operated by the Department of Public Works, covered nearly 8 acres of industrial property on the outskirts of downtown and housed a fleet of over 100 specialized vehicles, including rear-loading packers, side-loading automated trucks, street sweepers, and recycling collection vehicles that served a metropolitan area of 1.2 million residents across 127 square miles of urban and suburban territory. Derrick "Deke" Caldwell, a 43-year-old veteran sanitation worker with exactly 20 years of city service and an impeccable safety record, methodically donned his regulation, high-visibility, reflective safety vest and heavy-duty work gloves while mentally reviewing the computerized route assignment that would dictate his activities for the next 8 hours. His co-workers, a diverse group of city employees representing various backgrounds and experience levels, stretched tired muscles, shared thermos coffee, and exchanged the usual early morning jokes about difficult customers, mechanical problems, and the supervisors who would monitor their performance throughout the day. The camaraderie among sanitation workers was genuine and deep, forged through years of performing physically demanding work under challenging conditions while maintaining essential city services that most residents took for granted. These men and women understood the importance of their jobs and took pride in keeping the city clean and functional, despite limited recognition and modest compensation that rarely reflected the true value of their contributions to urban life. As the other drivers prepared for another routine day of collecting residential and commercial waste throughout their assigned districts, Deke quietly slipped away from the group and approached his assigned refuse packer, truck number 847, a 2018 Peterbilt chassis equipped with a McNeilus rear-loading compactor body that could process up to 40 cubic yards of waste material per load. He activated the truck's onboard computer system and scanned the detailed manifest that displayed his route assignment in glowing green text. Route 52, Luxury District, Commercial Pickup, Priority Service Level Alpha. The computerized routing system indicated that Deke would be responsible for collecting waste from 37 commercial establishments in the city's most affluent shopping and business district, including high-end retail stores, exclusive restaurants, luxury hotels, and professional offices that generated valuable waste streams requiring specialized handling and secure disposal protocols. The other sanitation workers conducting their own pre-shift preparations had no idea that before sunrise, Deke would use truck 847 to execute one of the most audacious and sophisticated heists in the city's criminal history, stealing $18 million worth of precious gemstones from the city's most exclusive jewelry district and vanishing without leaving a trace of evidence that could lead investigators back to him or his carefully planned operation. 4 days earlier, Derrick Caldwell had served 2 tours of duty in Iraq as a Marine Corps logistics specialist, where he had earned commendations for his ability to coordinate complex supply operations under combat conditions and his skill in managing resources efficiently, even when facing equipment shortages and challenging tactical situations. After completing his military service with an honorable discharge and the rank of staff sergeant, Deke had returned to civilian life and taken a position with the city's Department of Sanitation, where steady employment, comprehensive health benefits, and a reliable pension system provided the stability he needed to support his family and build a secure future. At 43 years old, Deke was widely known throughout the sanitation department as a reliable, hardworking employee who never missed scheduled shifts, maintained his equipment meticulously according to departmental standards, and handled the physical demands of waste collection without complaint, despite the wear and tear that 20 years of lifting heavy containers, operating hydraulic systems, and working in all weather conditions had inflicted on his back, shoulders, and knees. His personnel file contained numerous commendation letters from supervisors who praised his punctuality, safety consciousness, and willingness to assist newer employees in learning proper procedures and techniques. Deke had also volunteered for additional training programs and had earned certifications in hazardous waste handling, equipment maintenance, and emergency response procedures that made him one of the most qualified drivers in the department. But beneath his well-earned reputation as a model municipal employee and respected colleague, Deke was drowning in financial obligations that his annual salary of $47,000 couldn't adequately cover, despite his frugal lifestyle and careful budgeting practices that eliminated all unnecessary expenses from his household budget. His 16-year-old daughter Sarah had been diagnosed with a severe learning disability and attention deficit disorder that required specialized educational programs, weekly therapy sessions, and medical treatments that cost over $2,000 monthly, even with insurance coverage through the city's employee health plan. Sarah attended a private school that specialized in helping students with learning differences, and the tuition alone consumed nearly $15,000 annually of Deke's after-tax income. His ex-wife, Jennifer, who had primary custody of Sarah during weekdays, had been unable to contribute her court-ordered portion of these educational and medical expenses after losing her job as a retail manager 6 months earlier, when the department store where she worked closed due to corporate restructuring. The loss of Jennifer's income had left Deke responsible for costs that consumed nearly 60% of his take-home pay, making it impossible to maintain his mortgage payments, utilities, and basic living expenses. Additionally, Jennifer had been demanding increased alimony payments to cover her rent and living expenses, citing her unemployment and the need to maintain stable housing for Sarah's well-being. She had retained a family law attorney and was threatening legal action that could result in wage garnishment and court-ordered support payments that would exceed Deke's ability to pay while maintaining his own housing and transportation. The mounting financial pressure had forced Deke to make increasingly desperate decisions over the past 18 months. He had taken out a second mortgage on his modest 3-bedroom house, borrowed against his pension fund, and maxed out 4 credit cards with a combined limit of $22,000. Despite these measures, he was now 3 months behind on his primary mortgage payments, and the bank had initiated foreclosure proceedings that would result in the loss of his home within 30 days unless he could immediately pay the outstanding balance of $8,000. The stress of supporting 2 households while paying for Sarah's specialized care had also affected Deke's physical and mental health. He had developed chronic insomnia, hypertension, and anxiety symptoms that required medication he could barely afford. His primary care physician had recommended stress management counseling and suggested that Deke consider bankruptcy as a way to eliminate his unsecured debt. But bankruptcy would also mean losing his house and potentially affecting his city employment and security clearance. Friday afternoon, October 4th, Deke was approached by Marisol Vega, a 38-year-old route coordinator in the sanitation department's dispatch office, who was responsible for managing pickup schedules, coordinating between drivers and municipal clients, and ensuring that all commercial waste collection requirements were met according to contract specifications and city regulations. Marisol had worked for the city government for 12 years, starting as a data entry clerk and gradually working her way up to her current position through night school courses, professional development programs, and consistently excellent performance evaluations. However, she had been repeatedly passed over for supervisory positions despite her experience, qualifications, and the strong recommendations of her immediate supervisors. The pattern of promotion denials had become a source of increasing frustration and bitterness for Marisol, who suspected that gender discrimination and office politics were preventing her advancement within the municipal bureaucracy. She had filed formal complaints with Human Resources and had consulted with an employment attorney about potential legal action, but had been advised that proving discrimination would be difficult and expensive without more concrete evidence of bias. "I've been analyzing the waste collection data for the luxury district routes," Marisol said during their conversation in the employee break room, speaking in low tones to avoid being overheard by other workers who might report their discussion to supervisors. "Some of those high-end jewelry stores on Fifth Avenue generate very interesting waste streams, especially during periods when they're processing large shipments for international clients." LuxGem Jewelers in particular has been receiving and shipping gemstone collections worth millions of dollars, and their waste disposal patterns suggest that valuable materials might occasionally end up in containers that are scheduled for routine collection and processing. Deke immediately understood that Marisol wasn't talking about salvaging discarded jewelry boxes, display materials, or packaging that might have modest resale value. Over the next 30 minutes, while maintaining the appearance of a casual workplace conversation, she explained that her position in the dispatch office provided detailed knowledge of pickup schedules, security camera monitoring systems, and the computerized tracking systems that recorded every truck's movements throughout the city in real time. LuxGem is currently preparing for the International Gemstone Exhibition that's scheduled to open next week at the convention center. Marisol continued, consulting notes that she had disguised as routine paperwork to avoid attracting attention from passing supervisors. They've been receiving shipments of loose gemstones worth tens of millions of dollars from suppliers in Africa, South America, and Asia, sorting them into specialized display collections and preparing them for shipment to exhibition venues throughout North America and Europe. She had discovered through careful analysis of waste collection data that LuxGem's disposal patterns had changed significantly during the past month, with increased volumes of specialized packing materials, empty security cases, and shipping containers that suggested much higher value merchandise was being processed through their facility than was typical for routine retail operations. The gemstone sorting and packaging process generates substantial amounts of waste material, Marisol explained, but it also creates opportunities for someone who understands exactly when and where to look for items that might have been accidentally discarded or mistakenly included in waste containers. That evening, Deke met with Robbie Yang, a 35-year-old city mechanic who was responsible for maintaining the sanitation department's fleet of specialized vehicles, including garbage trucks, street sweepers, recycling vehicles, and support equipment that kept the city's waste collection system operating efficiently. Robbie was a highly skilled automotive technician who had earned ASE certifications in diesel engine repair, hydraulic systems, and electronic diagnostics, making him one of the most qualified mechanics in the municipal vehicle maintenance department. Robbie had been working on municipal equipment for 15 years, starting as an apprentice mechanic immediately after completing a 2-year automotive technology program at the local community college. His technical expertise and reliability had earned him supervisory responsibilities and the trust of department managers who relied on his knowledge to keep expensive equipment operating despite limited maintenance budgets and increasing demands on the vehicle fleet. However, Robbie's salary had remained essentially stagnant due to municipal budget constraints that prevented the city from offering competitive wages to retain experienced mechanics. His current annual income of $52,000 was significantly below what he could earn in private sector automotive repair shops or industrial maintenance facilities, but he had remained with the city because of the health insurance benefits that covered his wife's chronic medical condition. Unfortunately, Robbie had also developed a serious gambling problem over the past 3 years, initially betting small amounts on professional sports, but gradually escalating to high-stakes poker games at underground establishments that operated outside legal oversight. His gambling losses had accumulated to over $38,000, and he owed money to people who weren't patient about collecting their debts and had made explicit threats about the consequences of continued delays in payment. "I can modify your truck to include sophisticated hidden storage compartments that won't be detected during routine inspections or maintenance procedures," Robbie explained while showing Deke detailed technical diagrams of garbage truck chassis construction, hydraulic system layouts, and electronic control systems that he had prepared using computer-aided design software available in the maintenance facility. The proposed modifications would involve installing a custom-fabricated false floor compartment in Truck 847's chassis that could be accessed only by removing a specific rivet and lifting a concealed panel that would appear to be a standard structural component. The compartment would be large enough to hold several duffel bags or cases and would be positioned in a location where it wouldn't interfere with the truck's hydraulic compaction systems, weight distribution, or safety equipment. The modifications will be completely invisible to anyone who doesn't know exactly where to look and how to access the hidden compartment, Robbie assured Deke. "I can also install electronic countermeasures that will temporarily disable the truck's GPS tracking system for precisely timed intervals without triggering diagnostic alerts that might prompt supervisory investigation or maintenance inspections." Over the weekend of October 5th and 6th, Robbie worked in complete secrecy during off hours at the vehicle maintenance facility, using his legitimate access as a senior mechanic to enter the building and work on truck 847 without arousing suspicion from security guards or other employees who might be present during weekend shifts. The installation process required sophisticated metalworking techniques and precision engineering to ensure that the hidden compartment would be structurally sound while remaining completely undetectable during routine inspections. Robbie fabricated custom brackets and support structures using materials that matched the truck's original specifications, and he used welding techniques that made the modifications appear to be factory-installed components rather than aftermarket additions. He also installed a military-grade GPS jamming device that he had purchased through underground electronics dealers who served customers requiring untraceable communication equipment and electronic countermeasures. The device could temporarily disable the truck's location tracking for precisely 12 minutes without creating data gaps that might trigger automatic alerts in the dispatch computer system. The jamming system was controlled by a concealed switch that Deke could activate when necessary, and it was programmed to automatically reset to normal operation after the predetermined time period to avoid creating suspicious patterns in the tracking logs that might prompt investigation by supervisors or IT specialists who monitored the fleet management system. Sunday evening, October 6th, Marisol used her administrative access privileges to the dispatch computer system to program a sophisticated temporary loop in the security camera feeds that monitored the curbside compactor area where LuxGem's waste was processed along with materials from other commercial establishments in the luxury district. The camera manipulation required advanced knowledge of the digital video recording system and network security protocols that protected the surveillance infrastructure. Marisol had acquired these technical skills through online courses and professional development programs, initially to improve her qualifications for promotion opportunities, but she was now applying this knowledge to criminal purposes. The programmed loop would display 20 minutes of normal, routine compactor activity while concealing whatever actually occurred during that critical time period. The false footage was created by editing together recordings from previous nights when the compactor area was empty and unstaffed, creating seamless video sequences that would appear completely authentic to security guards monitoring the feeds in real time or investigators who might later review the recordings. Marisol also verified that Deke's route assignment for Tuesday morning would include LuxGem Jewelers at exactly 2:13 a.m. during the overnight shift when commercial waste collection occurred in the luxury district to minimize disruption to daytime business operations and customer traffic. The timing was critical because it would place Deke at the target location during the precise window when security cameras would be displaying false footage instead of actual surveillance monitoring. Monday evening, October 7th, final preparations were completed when Robbie conducted comprehensive testing to confirm that the truck modifications were functioning properly and wouldn't interfere with normal waste collection operations or create safety hazards for Deke or other road users. The GPS jamming system was calibrated to activate and deactivate at precisely timed intervals, and backup systems were installed to ensure that if the primary device malfunctioned, the truck's standard tracking would resume normal operation without creating diagnostic alerts. Marisol performed final verification that the security camera loop was programmed correctly and would activate automatically at 2 a.m. on Tuesday morning, providing a 20-minute window of concealment that would be sufficient to complete the theft operation without detection by surveillance monitoring or security personnel. She also created false documentation in the dispatch system showing that truck 847's route included an authorized detour for special waste pickup that would explain any minor variations in timing or location that might be noticed by supervisors reviewing the computer logs after the fact. Tuesday, October 8th at 2:05 a.m., Deke began his assigned route through the luxury district, following the computerized pickup schedule that directed him to specific locations where commercial dumpsters and waste containers awaited collection according to service contracts between the city and individual businesses. The route had been carefully planned to include LuxGem Jewelers during the precise 20-minute window when security cameras would be displaying false footage instead of real-time surveillance. Deke drove slowly and deliberately through the empty streets, maintaining normal operating procedures while mentally rehearsing the steps he would need to complete during the limited time available for the theft operation. When Deke arrived at LuxGem's service area behind the main retail building, He found the usual collection of waste materials, including heavy cardboard shipping boxes, protective foam packaging, plastic security containers, and bubble wrap that had been used to transport and protect valuable items during international shipping operations. The waste containers were positioned in a secured area that was accessible only to authorized service personnel and was monitored by security cameras that would normally record all activity in the vicinity. But hidden among the routine waste materials, exactly as Marisol's intelligence had predicted, were 7 specialized velvet-lined security cases that contained loose gemstones worth approximately $18 million. The cases contained sapphires from Kashmir and Sri Lanka, emeralds from Colombia and Zambia, and rubies from Myanmar and Mozambique that had been temporarily stored at LuxGem while awaiting authentication, valuation, and preparation for shipment to international buyers and auction houses. The gemstones had been mistakenly included in waste containers during a chaotic evening, when LuxGem's staff was working overtime to process multiple shipments simultaneously while preparing for the upcoming exhibition. An inexperienced employee had confused empty security cases with cases containing valuable merchandise, resulting in $18 million worth of precious stones being scheduled for disposal as routine commercial waste. Working quickly and quietly to minimize his exposure time in the monitored area, Deke transferred the 7 gemstone cases from the waste containers to his truck's hidden compartment, carefully securing each case with padded brackets that would prevent movement or damage during transport. He replaced the valuable cases with sand-filled replicas that Robbie had prepared using identical containers and weighted materials that would approximate the appearance and weight of the original cases. The replacement operation was designed to ensure that the waste collection would appear completely normal to anyone who might later examine the containers or review documentation related to the disposal process. The replica cases were sealed and labeled identically to the originals, making detection virtually impossible unless someone specifically opened them and examined the contents in detail. The entire transfer process required exactly 8 minutes and 43 seconds, well within the 12-minute window provided by the GPS jamming system that prevented the truck's location from being recorded during the critical phase of the operation. Deke reactivated normal tracking systems, completed his assigned route according to the computerized schedule, and returned to the sanitation yard where he unloaded routine waste materials while keeping the gemstones concealed in the truck's hidden compartment. His behavior throughout the remainder of the shift was completely normal and professional, giving no indication that he had just completed one of the most valuable thefts in the city's history. Deke followed all standard procedures for vehicle inspection, route completion documentation, and equipment shutdown, maintaining the appearance of routine operations that would not attract attention from supervisors or coworkers. The theft wasn't discovered until 11:47 a.m. on Tuesday, when LuxGem's head gemologist, Dr. Sarah Chen, conducted a scheduled inventory of their exhibition collection and realized that $18 million worth of loose stones were completely missing from their secure storage system. The discovery triggered immediate panic among the jewelry store's management team and resulted in emergency notification of law enforcement agencies, insurance investigators, and security consultants who specialized in high-value property crimes. Detective Marcus Rodriguez of the Metropolitan Police Department's Major Crimes Unit was assigned to lead the investigation, and he initially focused on traditional theft scenarios, including burglary, employee theft, internal fraud, and armed robbery. Rodriguez was a 20-year veteran investigator with extensive experience in jewelry crimes, art theft, and sophisticated property crimes. But the LuxGem case presented unique challenges that would test his investigative abilities and consume the next 18 months of his professional career. However, LuxGem's comprehensive security systems showed no evidence of unauthorized building access, forced entry, alarm system tampering, or suspicious activity by staff members, customers, or known criminal associates who might have been involved in planning or executing a theft operation. The building's surveillance cameras, motion sensors, and access control systems had recorded normal business operations with no indication of criminal activity or security breaches. The investigation eventually expanded to include examination of all service personnel who had legitimate access to the building, including cleaning crews, maintenance workers, delivery drivers, security guards, and waste collection workers who might have had opportunities to observe valuable materials or gain unauthorized access to restricted areas where gemstones were stored and processed. However, computerized GPS tracking logs from the sanitation department showed that garbage truck 847 had followed its assigned route precisely, with no unexplained stops, route deviations, or timing irregularities that might indicate involvement in criminal activity. The truck's electronic monitoring systems recorded normal operating parameters throughout the shift, and there was no evidence of tampering with tracking equipment or communication systems. Security camera footage from the compactor area where LuxGem's waste was processed showed what appeared to be routine collection activities with no indication of unusual behavior, unauthorized access to valuable materials, or suspicious interaction between sanitation workers and waste containers that might have contained precious items. The investigators had no way of knowing that they were viewing sophisticated false footage that had been specifically created to conceal the actual theft operation. Detective Rodriguez interviewed Deke extensively, but found no evidence of criminal knowledge, suspicious behavior, or unexplained financial resources that might indicate involvement in the gemstone theft. Deke's financial records showed the expected pattern of modest income, mounting debts, and financial stress that was consistent with his known family situation and medical expenses. Tuesday evening, while investigators were still trying to determine how the gems had been stolen and were focusing their attention on LuxGem's employees and security systems, Deke completed his regular shift according to normal procedures and then met Marisol Vega at a predetermined location in an industrial area where she was waiting with a nondescript white panel van that she had rented using false identification documents. Working efficiently in the darkness of an abandoned warehouse parking lot, they transferred the 7 gemstone cases from truck 847's hidden compartment to the panel van's cargo area, ensuring that no evidence of the valuable materials remained in the municipal vehicle that would be inspected and maintained according to standard departmental procedures. Deke changed out of his sanitation uniform into civilian clothes that Marisol had provided, and he activated an electronic device that would permanently disable the truck's hidden compartment and remove all traces of the modifications that Robbie had installed. The device used thermite charges to weld the access points shut and destroy the concealed storage areas, making future detection virtually impossible even if investigators specifically searched for evidence of vehicle modifications. Using sophisticated false identification documents that Robbie had helped him obtain through contacts in Los Angeles' underground economy, Deke drove the panel van to a regional airport where he had arranged passage on a chartered aircraft that would transport him to Mexico City under an assumed identity. The flight was operated by a company that specialized in providing discreet transportation services for clients who required privacy and didn't want their travel documented through commercial airline systems. From Mexico City, Deke connected to a legitimate commercial flight to São Paulo, Brazil, where he had arranged temporary accommodation while establishing a new identity with the assistance of expatriate Americans who provided relocation services for people seeking to disappear from their previous lives for various personal or legal reasons. The gemstone cases were transported separately by Marisol, who drove the panel van to a private airfield where the valuable materials were loaded onto a small aircraft that flew them directly to a processing facility operated by an international criminal organization that specialized in laundering stolen precious stones and metals through underground markets in South America. The gemstones would be professionally recut and polished to eliminate distinctive characteristics that might allow identification by law enforcement agencies or insurance investigators, then sold through a network of dealers and collectors who didn't ask questions about provenance or legal ownership. The processed stones would eventually enter legitimate jewelry markets as untraceable materials with false documentation showing legal mining and import procedures. The investigation of the LuxGem theft continued for 6 months and involved extensive cooperation between local police, federal law enforcement agencies, international crime organizations, and private security firms hired by insurance companies to recover the stolen materials. Despite these comprehensive efforts, investigators achieved limited concrete results and were unable to identify the perpetrators or recover any of the missing gemstones. FBI specialists conducted detailed analysis of garbage truck 847's GPS tracking logs, electronic control systems, and maintenance records, but found no evidence of tampering, unauthorized modifications, or unusual activity that might indicate involvement in criminal operations. Computer forensics experts examined the truck's onboard systems, but discovered no traces of the jamming devices or hidden compartments that had been used during the theft. Forensic teams conducted exhaustive searches of the vehicle using advanced detection equipment, chemical analysis, and microscopic examination techniques, but found no physical traces of the missing gemstones or evidence that valuable materials had been transported in the truck. The cleaning and evidence elimination procedures that Deke and his accomplices had employed were sophisticated enough to defeat even professional forensic investigation methods. Marisol Vega continued working in the sanitation department's dispatch office, but claimed that her computer systems had been compromised by unknown hackers who had gained unauthorized access to her administrative credentials and used them to manipulate security camera feeds and create false documentation. Her explanation was technically plausible and sophisticated enough that investigators couldn't definitively prove her involvement, although they remained highly suspicious of the convenient timing and her obvious access to the systems that had been compromised. Marisol hired a criminal defense attorney who specialized in white-collar crime and cooperated fully with the investigation while maintaining her complete innocence and suggesting that she had been victimized by sophisticated criminals who had specifically targeted her because of her administrative access to municipal computer systems and security monitoring equipment. Detective Rodriguez and his investigative team followed leads across the country and eventually expanded their search to international locations, working with Interpol, foreign law enforcement agencies, and private investigators hired by insurance companies to track potential sales of the stolen gemstones through underground markets in Europe, Asia, South America, and the Middle East. The investigation consumed enormous resources and involved coordination between multiple federal agencies, international law enforcement organizations, and specialized crime units that focused on art theft, jewelry crimes, and sophisticated property crimes. Despite these extensive efforts, investigators were unable to locate the primary perpetrators or recover more than a few minor pieces that eventually surfaced in legitimate markets with false provenance documentation. 1 year after the theft, rumors began circulating throughout the city that an anonymous donor had made substantial contributions to various charitable organizations that provided educational and medical services for children with learning disabilities and special needs. The donations totaled over $2 million and were distributed through a foundation that couldn't be traced to any individual or organization despite extensive investigation by both law enforcement agencies and nonprofit administrators. The anonymous charitable contributions attracted significant media attention and prompted widespread speculation about whether they might be connected to the unsolved Lux gem theft. But investigators were unable to establish any definitive links between the donations and the missing gemstone collection. The money had been transferred through offshore banking systems and cryptocurrency transactions that made tracing the original source virtually impossible. 3 years after the heist, unconfirmed international intelligence reports suggested that Derrick Caldwell had been spotted in various South American countries, where he was allegedly living under multiple assumed identities and had established legitimate business operations that provided consulting services to import-export companies and logistics firms throughout Brazil, Argentina, and Colombia. However, law enforcement agencies in those countries were unable to locate anyone matching his description, despite extensive searches and cooperation with U.S. federal investigators who had issued international warrants and extradition requests. The reports couldn't be verified through official channels, and some investigators suspected that they might be deliberately false information designed to misdirect the ongoing search efforts. The Lux gem theft became a landmark case study in graduate-level criminal justice programs and was featured in FBI training materials as an example of how municipal employees with inside knowledge, legitimate access, and sophisticated planning could overcome security systems that weren't designed to prevent theft by trusted personnel with authorized access to sensitive areas and valuable materials. The city's sanitation department implemented comprehensive security upgrades costing over $800,000, including enhanced GPS tracking systems, real-time vehicle monitoring, biometric access controls, and computer security measures that made manipulation of routing systems and camera feeds much more difficult. However, investigators and security consultants believed that the criminals responsible for the gemstone theft had been too sophisticated and well-informed to attempt similar methods again. Garbage Truck 847 remained in active service for 2 additional years, but was eventually retired due to normal mechanical wear and scheduled replacement with newer equipment that incorporated advanced security features and monitoring systems. During the dismantling process, mechanics discovered traces of the sophisticated hidden compartment that had been used during the theft, confirming investigators' theories about how the crime had been accomplished. But the evidence came too late to be useful for prosecution or recovery efforts. Marisol Vega resigned from her position with the sanitation department 18 months after the theft and relocated to the Pacific Northwest, where she found employment with a private waste management company that provided services to commercial and industrial clients throughout Washington and Oregon. Her financial situation improved dramatically after the move, but federal investigators were unable to prove that her new prosperity was directly connected to the LuxGem gemstone theft. LuxGem Jewelers implemented comprehensive security upgrades totaling over $1 million, including advanced surveillance systems, enhanced inventory tracking procedures, improved employee background checks, and revised protocols for handling valuable shipments and waste disposal. However, the theft had severely damaged their reputation within the international jewelry industry, and several major clients moved their business to competitors with stronger security records and insurance coverage. Insurance companies paid claims totaling $21 million to cover the stolen gemstones, investigative costs, and business interruption losses suffered by LuxGem and other affected parties. Private investigators hired by the insurers continued searching for evidence of the missing gems for several years, but achieved no significant results beyond confirming that the theft had been carefully planned and professionally executed by criminals with extensive knowledge of security systems and law enforcement procedures. 5 years after the heist, the case remained officially unsolved despite extensive investigation by federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies supported by international cooperation and private security firms with unlimited resources. The stolen gemstones had completely disappeared into underground markets and were presumed to have been professionally processed and sold to private collectors throughout South America and other regions with limited law enforcement cooperation and extradition agreements. Urban legends and folklore developed around the sanitation worker who had supposedly outsmarted sophisticated security systems and vanished with a fortune while using the most mundane municipal equipment to accomplish an extraordinary crime. Some residents claim that Deke the collector had become a modern folk hero who had used discarded city resources to steal from wealthy jewelry dealers and redistribute the wealth through anonymous charitable donations to deserving families and organizations. Others believe that the theft had been orchestrated by international criminal organizations who had recruited local municipal employees as convenient accomplices and scapegoats, allowing the real masterminds to escape while investigators focused their attention on missing city workers who had limited criminal experience and financial resources. The truth remained hidden somewhere in the complex space between thorough professional investigation and persistent public speculation, known only to the people who had planned and executed one of the most creative and successful heists in the city's criminal history. The sanitation department continued its essential daily operations, collecting waste from luxury retailers, commercial establishments, and residential neighborhoods throughout the metropolitan area. But employees occasionally joked about checking dumpsters more carefully for valuable items that might have been accidentally discarded by careless business owners. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.